Welcome to Vegan Finds, and I am finally getting to use the Better Batter. My wife has allowed me to, or given me the okay to use this stuff to make cheddar cheese biscuits. I'm trying to zoom out there. So I'm going to start making the cheddar cheese biscuits right now. Okay, so the one thing I like about the boxes of Better Batter is they come in these 1 pound bags. So there's 5 of them, so you don't actually wreck an entire 5 pound bag of it, and it'll stay fresh for longer. So I need 2 cups of flour to start. So that's what I'm going to do right now is and normally speaking I'd be a lot more accurate with my measuring, but you know, these are biscuits. They're a little bit more forgiving than if you were making a cake. Let's put it that way. Okay, so I got my 2 cups of flour. Now I got to add the leavening agents to this. So we're going to be using baking powder and baking soda. And I need a 1/2 teaspoon of baking powder and 2 teaspoons of baking soda. Sheesh. Having trouble thinking. That's 1 teaspoon. 1.5 teaspoons. Might be time for some new baking powder. 2 teaspoons. And a 1/2 teaspoon. No. And a 1/2 teaspoon of baking soda. Okay, so I'm going to put in a 1/2 teaspoon of salt. Okay, 3/4 of a tablespoon of garlic powder goes in. Next is going to be some Old Bay seasoning. So I'm just going to eyeball 1/2 tablespoon here. 1/2 tablespoon of Old Bay. A teaspoon of sugar. That's going in. We're going to whisk this up. Okay, now we're going to add some almond milk. I'm using the Silk unsweetened almond milk. Okay, so I'm going to melt 1 stick of Melt Organic vegan butter. Before I forget, you know, it's one of those out of sight, out of mind things. I'm adding 2, thank you, but I already added the Old Bay. 2 tablespoons of nutritional yeast. Even though we're adding Daiya cheddar shreds to this, I believe that the nutritional yeast will add just an additional cheesy component to this. So I'm going to whisk in our melted butter. Now I'm going to add a little lemon juice to this, and then we're going to combine the wet ingredients into the dry, because that's how baking works. Wet into dry, not dry into wet, because it'll never work. My wet mixture, I'm adding 1 tablespoon of lemon juice. And now I'm going to get a spatula out, and we're going to start incorporating the wet ingredients into the dry. So I'll be right back. Okay, so when you're incorporating this in, you're just gonna kind of do it so it's just combined. You don't want it to be thoroughly combined where there's no flour, because the way a biscuit works is, you know, there's always a little floury texture to create that layer of flavor. into it, so I'm just gonna keep going here. It's kind of hard to do this one-handed, but you kind of get the point here. The way it kind of looks like biscuit dough already. All right, our liquid is in. C'est la vie. And now we're just going to continue to kind of mix this up. And there we have it. Our dough is mixed and ready to go. So now I just got to get the cheese, and we'll be ready to create some biscuits. Okay, so since I have a little leftover cheddar jack, I'm going to throw that in as well. So it's not going to just be straight up cheddar. There's a teeny tiny amount of this left, and you know, otherwise this would just go bad in my fridge. I'm going to use it because waste not, want not.
That's my cheese for your baked potatoes.
Well, now this will be your cheese for your baked potatoes. When I'm in the kitchen, my rules. Alright, so I got 1 cup and 1.5 cups. We're gonna just gently fold this in as best we can. And then we're going to start scooping this stuff out. Now, of course, this would look a lot different if you were not using gluten-free flour. Everything changes with gluten-free, and since I've never done this gluten-free, so this is going to be a first for us here in the house. See? Just want to make sure that the cheese is distributed all the way through. But there we have it. It's ready to go. I'm going to get out my lined baking sheet. I'm going to start scooping these out, and I'll show you how that's done in a minute. Okay, so I'm just going to scoop out about 1/4 cup of the biscuit dough. It really smells good. And these, you basically kind of want them free form. These are what you would call drop biscuits, where you just drop them. And you know, this should make probably 9 to 12. Depends on how generous 1/4 cup you give. This is definitely slightly more than 1/4 cup for each biscuit, but they shouldn't spread. But then again, I've never done this with gluten-free flour, so I can't be 100% sure what's going to happen. Other than they smell really good, so if anything, hopefully that'll translate into tasting really good. That's usually the case, but not always. Could be a coffee situation where it smells way better than it tastes, even though I do drink a lot of coffee. And I'm just going to finish these off, and I'll be back. So our biscuits are ready to go in the oven. I got 11, so I'm slightly bigger than 1/4 cup here, but you know, hey, that's all right. We're only 3 people here, so I think 11 biscuits will cover us. So these are going to go in the oven for 12 to 14 minutes. The oven's set at 475. We'll see how these come out, and in the meantime, while the food things, I got to show you this freaking biscuit. It looks amazing. I'm telling you, it smells great. It looks just like the biscuits that you would get at the restaurant, so I'm sure it's going to taste great. We topped it with a little bit of butter on top, obviously vegan butter. I'm not sure which one my wife used, but she basically put some pats on there and then threw it back in the oven for another 1.5 to 2 minutes to finish the baking process. So these are good to go.